See, we act like that. We say, you know what? There's all these issues in my life. If I could just get rid of them, then I'll be able to live this life to the full that Jesus talks about. But I got to get rid of all this stuff. You know, the issues that are in our life and the things that we wrestle with and the things that we blame for our stagnant Christian life, or just, you know, those issues that we're constantly praying over, we're constantly asking forgiveness. See, they're not like the toaster. I had one of those toasters. You had one of those toasters? You know, put the bread in, push the toaster down, it pops right back up. Make me so mad. I just want a piece of toast. It's not that complicated. And you stand there and you slam it down harder, pops back up. You know, I'm going to hold it down. As soon as you let go, it pops back up. You know, all that. So somebody was nice. They got us a new toaster for Christmas. But you know, it's not like that. See, we have to understand, and I realize there's a lot of, you know, somebody explained salvation to me this way one time. And it's the easiest way I can demonstrate what I'm trying to say here this morning. We live our life prior to salvation, and there's a lot of garbage that is falling off of our life, okay? We're leaving a lot of trash behind. We're hurting a lot of people. We're making a lot of mistakes. We're doing a lot of stupid stuff. But there comes a point of salvation where we stop. And God turns us around. Now, here's the thing we may need to understand. Some of that trash that we've left behind, we might have to clean some of that up. Okay? We might have to go to some of those people we've hurt. We may have to deal with some of our mistakes. We may, we can be real lucky. Christ may forgive a lot of things, you know. There may be addictions in our life that at the point of salvation, He takes that addiction away or whatever. And that's great. Praise God for that. But sometimes we got to work through some of these things. The difference is this. We need to understand that we've already won. He says, I've come to give you life to the full. See, part of the working through this junk is to testify the greatness of what He's doing in our life. It's not I sure wish God would take this from me. No, you put it there to begin with. But He's going to be there to help you get rid of it. It's just going to take some time. We're just going to have to work through some things. There's some processes that might have to be gone through. Because, see, unfortunately, life affects more than just our actions. It also affects how we think and all these other things. So anyway, we have this constant returning to the cross, which we need to do. We need to come. We need to ask for forgiveness. But see, the thing is we need to understand we were forgiven for everything. It's a matter of us accepting the forgiveness. 1 Corinthians 15:4 says, if Christ is not raised, then all of our preaching is useless, and your trust in God is useless. See, coming to the cross is great. We've got to come to the cross, but guess what? The more important thing took place a couple days later, when He rose from the dead. And I think a lot of times we kind of see that as a nice afterthought. You know, kind of needed that part of the story, but it's the cross, the cross. We sing about the cross. We preach about the cross. And the cross is very important, but so was the resurrection. And I think that's where so many believers get hung up at. We're stuck at the cross because it's easy. And you say, well, Pastor Don, I don't understand. Why are you saying being at the cross is easy? It was horrible. It was terrible. It was gross and gruesome and all. No, because see, at the cross, we can still hang on to all that junk from the past. We can be at the foot of the cross and still cling to everything we've got. See, it's when we lay it at the cross and we acknowledge the resurrection. The cross had to happen. He had to die. The sin, the punishment, all of that had to be taken care of. But if Christ didn't raise from the dead, He wouldn't be any different than Buddha or Muhammad or any of them else out there. He rose from the dead. And because He rose from the dead, we can have that life He wants us to have. 1 Corinthians 13:16 says, do you realize that all of you together are the temple of God and the Spirit of God lives in you? We say that, but is He living through us? Are we letting Him live through us? Or are we still allowing the distractions? Are we still allowing the subtle lies of the enemy to not allow His Spirit to live and reign in our life? Ephesians 3:17 says, as I pray that Christ would be more and more at home in your hearts, as you trust in him. May your roots go down deep into the soil of God's marvelous love. See, something incredibly dramatic has to take place in our hearts in order for it to be the dwelling place of God. We have to allow the work on the cross to separate the sin in our life. It has to separate it. There's a scene in this movie where the lead guy, Caleb is his name, he's got some internet issues. And he finally reaches a point where he takes the computer out, and another one of these great Mr. Rudolph scenes, where he takes the computer out and he takes a ball bat and he smashes the computer up. And he throws it in the trash. So that was the beginning of the work that God was doing in his heart. It was part of that cutting away process. But see, he had to make that decision. We have to make that decision. I don't want this junk in my life. And I'm not going to allow the enemy to consistently and constantly tell me that I can't do anything about it. I'm tired of it. Because see, when we make that decision, then guess what? Our motivation for the things that we do and we say gets changed. The way we feel about things begins to change. Okay? The way we think about things begins to change because we're cutting this garbage out of our life. We have to renounce all the substitutes that we've placed in our hearts instead of him. So we have to forsake the idols of religiosity and spirituality and even tradition. And I'm not opposed to traditions, but you know what? We can cling to tradition instead of the reason that tradition exists. You understand what I'm saying? See, we can become so religious about things. We can become so spiritual about things that we can't even recognize God's trying to move. Because, well, he didn't do it that way before. There's a lot of things in the Bible I'm glad he's not doing that way anymore. You know, there's a part of me that I'm really glad that Jesus came and died on the cross, because quite frankly, the last thing I really want to have to do is get up and start killing a bunch of animals. You know, how would you feel? You had to bring in your favorite cat. I pick cats because I'm allergic to them, so it's easy to wipe them out. If I offended you, it's okay. I'm really not that cruel. But you know, think about that. And then you look at all the things that they had to do and all the process and just all these rituals. Jesus says, no, just come to me. See, we can come to the cross, but we can linger there. We can stay there, and we keep hanging on to the very things that put Jesus on the cross. We hang on to these things and we allow the injustices that have taken place in our life to become an excuse and a foothold for never understanding what it means to live life to the full. And we come and we ask for forgiveness, but we stay there because we just are afraid to let go. See, that's part of that robbing. You ever been robbed? You ever had your house broken into? It's a weird feeling. You come in and my parents' home, they've had 2 different houses broke into. And the first one, you know, it was actually a couple days later before we actually realized somebody had been in the house. My mom was looking for something, and as she was looking, she realized that somebody had been in the house going through things. And then, you know, as my brothers and myself, we realized, hey, there's stuff missing from our room. And, you know, it was little things. The second time that the house was broken into, they did some messing around. It was pretty obvious when they walked in the door that things were gone and things were stolen. It's a scary thought. It's a violation, and yet Satan wants to do that every single day in our life. And unfortunately, we let him. We let him all the time. And I'm not talking this, oh, everything's roses and just praise the Lord about everything, okay? But it's understanding, you know what, I am forgiven and I don't have to put up with that. those thoughts that come into our mind about, whatever. We get angry, we get upset, we all have our issues. We don't have to entertain that. You hear what I'm saying? Because there's freedom. The forgiveness is already there. It's living in the resurrection. It's living in the fullness that comes through salvation. It is the transformation that has taken place in our life. We don't have to keep doing all the same things. We don't have to keep thinking the same way. We don't have to act the same way or react the same way, because we are new people. Luke chapter 4, I'm wrapping up here. Luke chapter 6, verses 43 and 45 says, a good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. A tree is identified by the kind of fruit it produces. Figs never grow on thorn bushes or grapes on bramble bushes. A good person produces good deeds. And I mean good person, I don't mean this in, I'm a good person. I've never heard. It's not what this is one of those translation issues here. Good person here means the person whose life has been given over to Christ. It says a good person produces good deeds from a good heart, and an evil person produces evil deeds from an evil heart. Whatever is in your heart determines what you say. Luke 8:15. But the good soil represents honest, good-hearted people who hear God's message, cling to it, and steadily produce a huge harvest. See, Jesus teaches us that our hearts can be good. Our hearts can be pure. Our hearts can be noble. But we have to allow that to become real. We accept the work of the cross, but we live in the resurrection. Stand with me today.